The Golden Share Podcast. Welcome to another episode of the Golden Share Podcast. I have Jesse Gaddis, an old colleague and friend of mine. We go back all the way to college, to uni. We went to Buff State together in the same fraternity. He's gone on to do some pretty big and bright things. So let's just jump right into it. And Jess, why don't you tell us how you got started? Tell us a little bit about your business. Give yourself a big plug here.
All right. Well, my name is Jesse Gaddis, as Oleg had said, and I started an electronic cigarette company back in 2010, known as Bedford Slims. You can find us at bedfordslims.com and in select stores throughout Brooklyn, New York City, and scattered throughout the states. That's kind of what I do. It's a very simple product, and it's a very simple business I run.
Tell us some of the hardships you might have had starting your business.
Oh man, I came from, as you know, the ad creative world. So while I had the brand and the aesthetic and kind of the form factor in mind for my product, what I didn't have was I didn't have money. So
Welcome to everybody else's world.
I didn't have money. I didn't have, legal or any type of filing aid for getting a business off the ground or even understanding even the basic mechanics of that. So it's been a learning process, and I'm still learning. I'm still learning new things every day. But I would say some of the biggest obstacles I had at first, obviously, was finding people, who I could get their nads pumping, so to speak, to kind of give me some money so we could try this. And I noticed that, what I found was the kind of, I guess my solution there was to just put my head down and bring out what I thought I could do best, which was to create a product, a brand, and even get together enough flavors to make something that I could put in front of someone to say, all right, we're going to give you a chance, Jesse. How much do you need? And that's basically how it went down. Little by little, people started actually joining Bedford Slims in one way or another to kind of help me as they saw that I was taking this more and more seriously. And so that's my advice to anyone is that, like, if you're in doubt and you don't have the money, don't worry too much about that at first. Just get your product to a point where you can get someone stoked about seeing it.
Cool. Well, I think you touched a little bit on financing, and I'm glad you did because we usually tackle that a little bit later in the podcast when we start talking about, the funding for how you got your business started. So I think we'll touch back on that in a little bit. But why don't you tell us just the personal story, kind of where you come from. You mentioned you're from the creative world. Tell us the personal story, and if you always knew you wanted to be an entrepreneur, or if it kind of just came to you, how that whole thing played out for you.
Great question, actually, Alex. The thing is, I had started really young, or I guess I caught the entrepreneurial bug, as they say, somewhere around 16 years of age. I was working with my sister in Manassas, Virginia, at her company, and hers was unique in that she did event invitations, but she was one of the first companies to bring it online. So her clients were all over the world, and I saw that just like what you could do. I mean, she didn't even have a printer, she just knew how to kind of delegate print shops and manage that and get a final product to whoever wanted invites and unique invitations. From there, I just kind of always had this kind of thing in the back of my head, where I knew I would just flourish if I were to just do things on my own, as opposed to as opposed to working for other people. And I think I found that to be really educational when I moved here. All the design positions and the writing gigs, and what I found was, while that was satisfying, it really wasn't my project at the end of the day. It was someone else's, and I felt like I was just kind of one piece in a much larger picture, and I'd rather be on the other side of the table looking at the full picture and picking those pieces and where to play them. It's more fun that way for me.
Cool. Well, so you think it's more about working with other people that is have you ever honed in on what is the exact reason? Is it because you don't like working under other people and you feel like that limits you creatively? Or is it just the potential, kind of the money-making aspect of it?
I think it's a little bit of both. I mean, I remember once saying this to a friend, and I think it really struck home with him, is that, like, when he asked me like how things were going with Bedford Slims initially, I was like, well, we're making money. I'm not making as much as I probably would be initially as a at my level of creativity for someone else, but I was much happier. I found myself with more time to do what I wanted to do. I wasn't commuting or schlepping anywhere. I was, working out of my apartment. So for me, I found that I was getting more done in a day than sitting around waiting for a client's approval or waiting for that fifth round of rewrites or something. There's never that. I'm not sitting in some meaningless meeting. I'm actively doing something at all times. And through this, I found so many people. Luckily I was in Williamsburg. I found so many freelancers and other people who also kind of had the same kind of thing going on for them. So Bedford Slims has been a real collaborative effort, and it's good to be on the other side where I'm kind of delegating duties and managing my own time as opposed to someone else. But yeah, like I was saying before, what I said to my friend was basically, I'd hate for someone else to decide how much money I'll be able to make this year, because that's essentially what happens when you follow a career and you don't branch off and make investments or have a side gig or even become an entrepreneur like myself. I mean, you have to have something to make more money than just the 60 or 80 grand that you make in a year, or otherwise it's just not exciting. You just know what you're going to make next year.
Well, it's not exciting, but also in a place like New York, it's unlivable. I mean, you just really can't live in New York City for 60 to 80 grand. I mean, 80 grand is kind of that place where you might be able to do it, but that's not a vacation. That's not, any of the luxuries. And that's not going out every week, taking your girl out, whatever it may be. That's kind of just the bare minimum. So I totally agree with you. You kind of have to, at this point, in the economy, offset some of that with, like you said, freelance work or something else. But speak to a little bit, because I mentioned that obviously we go back a pretty long time, and I've never known you to be, that guy who's I want to have an e-cigarette company. I mean, that's not something that ever kind of came out of your mouth. So take us back to the big bang moment of the e-cigarette aspect and how you got into the actual business itself rather than into entrepreneurship.
So I'll tell you, it was really love at first sight. I had. You're right. I never had mentioned anything about even being in the tobacco industry. It doesn't look like a sexy business, but the thing was, and it couldn't be anything else but an electronic cigarette. I just found the product so revolutionary. I mean, the first time I saw it was one of my friend's cousins' companies, and it was just this crappy thing that just came out of like what looked like something straight from China. There was no love in it, and I just saw that there could be something to this if people, packaged it a certain way, paid more attention to detail, flavors. Because what I find is that this is truly, as you have probably read before, and your listeners have read the tipping point is that there's these sticky things, and tobacco seems to be one of them. So when I was looking at all the businesses I could get into, what I kept going back to was this idea that this, in a very big way, electronic cigarettes, could replace smoking, and I could be at the beginning of that. And I thought that that was more exciting than any of the other ideas I had that year. And I just focused in on it and just kept going with it because it did seem exciting, and it still is a very exciting field.
Cool. When would you say that you kind of knew you had a business on hand, not just a hobby or kind of something that you're doing on the side? Because I don't need to tell you that we all start out in a sense as a hobby. We always want it to be a business, no doubt. That's always where we want to take it. But so often that first year, that first part of it is just doing the creative, doing all the little things. So when did you feel like, wow, this actually just turned into a business for me?
I mean, the signs were there, and we started bringing in about like, I guess, 30K a month in revenue. And, even then at that point, I still wasn't comfortable paying myself. I was still in that kind of area where I felt like this could crumble at any month. And, all I had to show for it was last month's revenues. But we started really rocking that in. And then all of a sudden, boom, we got on New York Times' style page, their Thursday style section, front page. whole article might as well have been an advertisement for Bedford Slims, and that's when I knew that like we really have something. And the press ride from that, and just everything moving forward, we've really, there's a profile behind us, and that's when I knew that I can pay myself finally. And that took about 2.5 years.
I mean, that's quite a long time, but that's certainly not out of the ordinary for most entrepreneurs as well to do that. So tell us a little bit about the support network that you had, starting a business. We kind of started talking about some of the challenges. I know you mentioned funding was a challenge. I think that's kind of a challenge for everybody. So talk about any other challenges, not like finance necessarily related, and the support network that you had, to kind of overcome that stuff.
Well, I would say, aside from that challenge, there was a negative perception of the product. So much so that even my own friends won't even like my Facebook fan page for Bedford Slims, So there was a negative perception. The media was all over e-cigarettes, villainizing, saying all these untrue things. And that's a ride that's been going on for the whole time I've been in business. But as we're growing, we're noticing that perceptions are changing. People are accepting the product. But I will tell you, one of the biggest problems that we had was getting exposure, because we were stuck to the same rules as big tobacco and other liquor companies, in that, we're not allowed to have Google AdWords. Facebook will not promote our messages. PayPal won't take our payments online, but most people trust PayPal, and they did it in 2010. A lot of people wouldn't just willy-nilly throw down a credit card and buy something online from you. So those perceptions of blocking tobacco and, these kind of just really kind of irritating self-censoring from some of these major providers online have always been kind of a roadblock for us. But that's why you have to get creative. So the networks and all that stuff comes from, I knew people who knew about payment gateways that could help us get our sales online without, having to use PayPal. Finding those ways to promote yourself online through bloggers and word of mouth and social media, Instagram, all those things to, offset what could be, being front page, paying for those great Google AdWord ads that you see, when you do a search for something. It's a lot of finding those people who really understand working outside of the box is basically going to be something for an industry like this, where there isn't billions of dollars involved just yet. So it's a lot of little guys put together rather dynamic companies, and they have to think way out of the box. And so it's finding talent across the board, from financial to advertising, promotion, PR, etc.
So maybe you could tell us at this point a little bit more about, did you raise any money? Did you go about it through VCs, institutional players, or was it just angels? How did you do it? Anything that you think would help the viewers, basically, and people listening, understand how you went about getting money, especially, with the fact that you mentioned that the industry was kind of, a little bit dark to start with, and kind of how people view it. So yeah, speak to that.
Yeah, I mean, well, with that is like I was saying before, is like you really got to create a compelling product, something that like, more than 30 pages of a business plan, which we had those outlines too, was finding those people who, and this was the middle of the recession, mind you. This is 2010 when I'm looking for money, so banks were out of the question. The idea of the ninja loans, no income, no job, okay, just didn't work here. So what we were doing is we were finding smaller investors, people with maybe just a little bit of money to give. And so what we did is we came up with this idea of basically a debt auction, we call it. It's a promissory note basically backed by debt. So by the collateral that we were buying, or inventory. So imagine that if I bought $20,000 worth of e-cigarettes, you would either, or I mean, this was a long shot, but it did work well enough. You could either, get your money back plus 15%, or we would just give you the inventory and you can try to sell it on your own. Either way, no one was losing anything. Um, and what we found was there was enough people who would just throw 2 to 5 grand and take this ride with us. And we were very aggressive. So people were, the auction went basically like, all right, I will give you 5 grand at 15%. And then someone else would chime in and be like, 13%, 5 grand, 6 months. Within 6 months, I was able to sell all of our initial inventory, plus had expanded the line. So it was no problem paying back all of those people. And by that point, we were bringing in just enough money to keep that cycle going. And from there on out, I never took another loan out, only to get basically credit with banks. So those are the only loans that I've gotten so far.
Awesome. So before we go into the industry specific information, because I think that, in this conversation specifically, the industry is actually going to be a great topic because of all the things that go with it. But you have any advice for entrepreneurs just on the business side of things before we kind of go into the industry part?
I would say just, no matter what your business is, if you're not talking about it day, night, eating it for breakfast, if you just don't care enough, don't start it. You got to follow this passion all the way through. And, if you're psyched, chances are you're going to get enough other people psyched to really, at least lay down that initial framework and build something dynamic.
So just on that topic, how is your work-life balance and how has it changed since you started the business? Because I just asked that because a lot of people talk about the fact that being an entrepreneur creates a no work-life balance whatsoever. You live and breathe it, like you said. So did you feel like you had a work-life balance starting out, and how did you manage that?
I didn't. I mean, my girlfriend was not a big fan of me for a couple of years, actually.
So you're saying something changed? She's actually a big fan now?
She is a big fan. I've learned to balance it out. I would say, although my load is always more and more kind of intimidating to look at the same time, I've figured out a lot of things that took up a lot of time, if that makes sense to you. I've learned to automate certain systems and find ways to, delegate duties in such a way that, I'm not working for Bedford Slims. Bedford Slims is kind of working for me at this point. It's more of an engine, and having those necessary pieces in play and those systems has freed up more time, and I'm making more moves wisely, and I'm not wasting time. It is the most important part. And I've also learned that just going out and taking a walk for a couple hours a day versus sitting at your desk staring at a screen actually frees up more time than you think. You have more time to kind of soak in what you're doing and relax from that. And I think that's the problem with most people when they first start, is they're breathing it so much that after a while they could actually be doing some detrimental things to not only the business but to their health.
Yeah, for sure. I totally agree with that. And one of the things I think that's so interesting about your specific business compared to some of the other conversations I have is it is by some considered a fringe business, something that's linked with bad health. I'm not saying that is the case. In fact, I think on e-cigarettes, the studies haven't really quite been conclusive about the health aspect of it. But tell us about, once again, just going into it. How did you get out of that mold and out of that shell that people try to pigeonhole e-cigarettes in? And I guess the follow-up also, secondary question to that is, when we were talking about the business side on the flip side of the conversation, you were saying that you were having a tough time getting funding, and when you came into it, it was kind of a new business. But I mean, even in 2010 or 2011, you were still having tons of players like Blue and Logic, and you were starting to get tons of mods. So speak to how you overcame that as well, where there are lots of different flavors and all that stuff, and you have to make your flavors and your e-cigarette itself, to your style and to a style that's going to be palatable to the people. So speak to that.
Yeah, it's an industry that's now super saturated. When I started, there were no e-cigs on the shelf in general, and I remember walking into my first few bodegas before we even had actually inventory to sell. I was pre-selling, and just explaining the product. I learned to work a pitch, and it became really successful in that. This was something quite exciting, and I could see in their eyes the happiness and the kind of opportunity that I saw when I initially saw the first e-cigarette ever presented to me back in 2009. Um, and as you know, now we have like unicorn piss and flavor and Dunkin' Donuts brand, and it's gotten wildly out of control. But for us, what we found has been the most successful thing is just believing in our niche and what we are. Bedford Slims actually does kind of stand for a certain lifestyle. It isn't the guy with the gigantic juice box shaped mod. He has his own thing, and that exists, and that's fine. He wants to blow, Ken Street Fighter style Haruken balls with his fog or whatever. But for us, it's more of a discrete device. It's easy to use. It's no nonsense. We wanted to return back to a time when smoking was it was fun, it was enjoyable, it wasn't something we thought about. And for us, the simulacrum is right there. It's that we have a simple cigarette-looking device, and we want people to think a little bit more about what they're putting into their body, which is why, for us, we've always had a strong emphasis on the kind of the USA-made flavors, having total control and hygienic factory production, all the way from how the batteries are produced to everything. This in turn has given us kind of the traditional edge of being similar and almost nostalgic in brand, but also having something that's reliable and also high quality for a good price. Do I think that will change or that people will move on to bigger devices? Some will, but also at the same time, some people just want the smaller style, which is totally in our lifestyle and the brand's environment. So I would say for right now, and I might be trailing off, the real success behind Bedford Slims has been not so much trying to keep pace with all of these other brands, but noticing what was great about the first time we saw an electronic cigarette. The opportunity, the potential, the real chance to kind of save a lot of lives. That's all still boiled down into just this small device.
And then on the negative aspect of smoking slash e-cigarettes, how did you guys overcome that? What are you doing about it now? What's changed?
What's been great about that is, and being in New York City in front of all this media, is I've had a lot of opportunity to talk to the press and give our side of the story and work with CASA, which is the Secession Association Smokeless Tobacco. I can't give you the whole acronym right now, but they're one
I'll
of the
put it
big
down
leaders.
underneath so people have it.
Yeah, yeah, they're the big guys fighting for the everyday smoker, the e-cig smoker, the person who, they're trying to quit smoking, and these are the guys who are trying to make sure that legislation doesn't get blown out of hand. Because far too often what we're finding is, and just snuck into these bills are, these kind of ludicrous e-cigarette laws, and some of them make sense, and others really don't. And, if we don't get our side of the story, you're going to see things like just Marlboro, RJ Reynolds, all of these big brands being the only players in the game. And that's a real travesty because, there are the mod types, the people who want the big smoke rings and the unique juices, and those just won't be available anymore. It's tough to say if even Bedford Slims would be available. That's how tough these rules can get.
And so, is there like one thing, one piece of legislation that you guys are all fighting for? Where's the battle now on that?
Well, I would say locally, the big battle in New York State is to make sure that the independent vape shops stay alive, making sure that flavored juices do not get outlawed. while we don't make a bubblegum flavor, I would willfully fight for anyone's right to have a bubblegum flavor, if that's what they want. Um,
Well, I mean, it also doesn't really make a ton of sense as far as what's considered, an acceptable flavor and what's not. I mean, why is coffee flavored accepted while bubblegum is not? Or, I mean, it's a flavor, so how do you regulate flavors? You could regulate nicotine, but you can't regulate flavors.
I mean, that's the sad thing is they already successfully did it with tobacco, and that's why you don't see the flavored tobaccos anymore. And that's why you see menthol on the fringe of always being regulated at a federal level. That's the problem is that like they just for some reason are joy killers to some extent for people who have taken up smoking as a hobby. And now that's trickling down into electronic cigarettes, a product that have always seen as the answer to quitting smoking. Their whole belief system is that this will target younger kids, but I see like grown adults all the time, with the most ridiculous flavors. And if that helped them quit, then more power to them. And also at the federal level, what we're seeing with FDA is a very serious issue wherein they could totally wipe out a large portion of the market with just one rule, and the rule is basically that you would have to fill out about a 200 plus page piece of paperwork per flavor, and the legal fees involved would be somewhere around $200,000 per flavor. And that's before we even get to nicotine levels, which they may also try to regulate. So not only would you have to get your tobacco flavor officially recognized by the FDA, you'd also have to get that nicotine level recognized as well. And that could be very expensive. I mean, that's the hairy, hairy loophole that I see as designed only for a few brands to really take advantage of. Like you mentioned before, Logic probably would be all right. But some of the smaller juice makers, forget about it. They're just completely wiped out. And those are the guys who are making exciting stuff.
Well, I mean, I think if the cost is $200,000 to put up a flavor, I think you're going to have people like Logic and Blue and all of them probably not have that many flavors either. Right now there's probably not that much of a cost, so they could go out and experiment with flavors. But if they did sign that legislation federally, I would imagine you would probably see a huge reduction in flavors, not only the providers of the flavors.
Absolutely. I mean, imagine if tomorrow all of the imported and small batch domestically made beers were to disappear from the shelves, and you could just have Coors Light, Miller's Light, Labatt's, or Bud. That's what that will look like.
Yeah. So I think we should probably, in full disclosure, both say that I know you smoked cigarettes a while back, as have I, and we both did quit using e-cigarettes. So I'm an e-cigarette smoker as well. I know you know that, but so I think there are stories that you can showcase quite easily about people who have taken the traditional cessation route using e-cigarettes and have cut regular cigarettes out of their life. I don't think that you would argue that cigarettes are bad for you, right? I just so it's out there.
Right. I would argue. Well, the thing is, with any product ever, you should always take some consideration to what you're putting into your body, and so for us, it wasn't even just my body. It's the bodies of all the thousands of people who buy from Bedford Slims. That's a really powerful thing to think about when you're a CEO is that if you fuck up someone's health, even just one person, you're out of business, forget about it. So for me, it's always been this kind of, I have to be up on the latest study. I've sponsored medical studies to kind of confirm what I believed was true about this product. So it's more than just saying, these are better for you than cigarettes. I mean, it's provably better for you. And if you're going to take nicotine in some way, I think that electronic cigarettes is the right answer. There's just nothing else quite like it.
So I usually ask my the people that stop by to talk about how government has helped or hindered their businesses, and to the most degree, because the businesses are all, marketing or, this, that, and the other thing, they usually tend to answer that the government kind of stays out of their way and they don't really have a whole lot of interaction with the government generally on any day-to-day basis for their businesses. I have a feeling that that's not the case for you. I feel like you probably have a pretty strong stance on the government and politicians and how they, how it interacts with your business.
Oh, to say the least, man. I mean, this is, and not only this, I mean, our market is all over the world. I mean, I've been banned from Iceland,
For
probably
e-cigarettes or something completely other.
e-cigarettes, man. I had a good business going in Iceland for a long time, and then one day the packages started coming back banned. Canada, they're another one who won't take anything with nicotine in it, so we can only send 0 milligrams. I would say it's not just government, it's governments, plural, for us. And working inside of it is a big question mark. This is definitely still an unregulated market, and anyone can get involved, sure. But, you have to really gamble it. I mean, most people don't start a bookstore thinking tomorrow that their bookshop's going to get shut down, but that is something that plays in the back of your mind when you start reading some of these FDA rulings that are coming up or these local laws that are in development. And you really have to take that into consideration. I mean, I can speak from personal experience with people who worked with me at Bedford Slims that there was a breaking point where they're just like, I can't do this anymore. Like, I just can't understand what's going to happen next. And for them, it kills them. For me, it's exciting. It's like, I know that I'm in a weird market rebellion similar to, cars taking over horse-drawn carts. And all other things throughout the ages that have kind of played with one's emotions and really, sparked a revolution, so to speak. So, it's fun for me in a way to have to deal with all this government stuff because at the end of the day, it makes Bedford Slims a more interesting company. But you take all of that with a grain of salt, obviously.
Yeah, sure. So what kind of growth are you seeing now? Tell us about the growth that you envision on having, including obviously the regulations and everything that could come down the pike. Where do you stand on the growth for the industry and then for your company as well?
My vision for the industry is in perfect dream scenario is that the independent vape shops go untouched. There's fair rulings with the FDA, and if that happens, then Bedford Slims will happily occupy shelf space in any bodega, convenience store across the country, across the world. And I see, with fair regulation, the disappearing act of boxes of actual tobacco cigarettes from these same vendors, all these bodegas and convenience stores. Because I think it's really the only logical step for us as humans, as humanity, to kind of take a step back from what we're doing that's really toxic and find that more convenient way. Like I was saying before, the horse-drawn cart will get you to Oregon, yeah, maybe in like 3 months, but the car gets you there in like 18 hours, 24 hours, or the airplane, it will get you there in like 12 hours. So why not with this product too? It's only obvious to me that as long as this is proven to be the safer solution to tobacco and taking in nicotine, then we have a very long history or career ahead of us. Anyone who's involved in this type of industry. For us personally, it's been interesting. It's been a grind. A lot of ups and downs, a lot of friends becoming enemies, enemies becoming friends. But it's been a great ride. We've doubled our business every year since we started. And we're starting to cool off a little bit on doubling, but that's because our numbers are getting so high that to get to that next step requires funding and additional stuff. So, I mean, that's really where we're at right now is figuring out what we want to do with this next and also introducing some of the new innovations that I have to our product line and to the e-cigarette or our e-cigalette device in general. So that's where we're at. Doing well.
Do you, do you see the e-cigarette being the exact same looking device in, say, 5 or maybe even 10 years as it is today? Do you see like a dramatic change in the way that the device will actually look and all that?
Well, I think there's a real expanding and contracting thing going here. Right now, our batteries are antiquated. And I think even how batteries are made for e-cigarettes, they're homemade, a lot of them, the mods and all that stuff. They're people that are tinkering to a point where they can commercially sell it because the engineering is good. But with that, you're going to see slimming down. So while we've never gone up in size, I have a theory that, eventually we'll go back down in size, but we'll be producing the same kind of clouds, the great kind of power or MAH support that you get with these bigger mods in a much smaller device. It only seems to be the most logical solution. Um, but for those people who want those big box things too, those will always be available, and people will always tinker. So that's really where I see us going, and where the industry is going is more push for form factor, more convenient devices, more reliable devices, faster charging devices, more powerful devices. Because at the end of the day, this is also not just a smoking cessation age device. This is also, in a lot of ways, technology. You know, so there's that.
So I guess pretty close to wrapping up. Once again, anything that you have that is going to be of interest to the viewers about the industry specifically that you can speak to?
I would just say if you're a smoker and you want to go down this road, get in touch with me at Jesse at bedfordslims.com. And I'm always there, or someone else is there for support on, if this is the type of thing for you. And certainly if you listen to this show, we'll give you a great discount. As far as the future of the industry, keep an eye on it. Keep an eye on the smoking industry as a whole. I think that there's going to be some big changes in the market, and putting your money into something like this, investing in these types of new industries, may be a good idea, especially as you're following along with the FDA. Because once those regulations come in, it's going to be a whole different ballpark. So the people who survive on this side of it to the other side are going to find themselves in a much better position.
You made Bedford Slims into not just a smoking brand, but a lifestyle brand. And, I worked with Bush Smarts before. They did the same thing for the outdoor space, tents and that kind of stuff. Talk about that. Obviously, I understand why it's necessary. I think most of the people will understand why it's necessary. But talk about how you did it. I getting the product in movies and music videos, all of that kind of stuff. It's hard to do. It takes quite a bit of breaking down doors and stuff. So speak to that a little bit about how you got off doing that, and how it's worked for you.
Yeah, I mean, it really, breaking down that first door is really hard, but you have to understand that, like, if you see even a little bit of love on Instagram, if you see anything that kind of stands out from your day to day, or any way that you can plug into kind of an influencer, maybe, I mean, for us, literally how I started, I looked up like the top 10 mommy bloggers. And I just emailed each one of them, and I said, hey, I have this new product, it's Bedford Slims. This is perfect for, those times when you want to have a cigarette, but, you're a mom now. Maybe you should try this. And I got enough kind of support there to kind of get the ball rolling. And who else but your mom to kind of nag you on e-cigarettes? So, I mean, it's funny. I mean, we kicked this company off in Williamsburg, Brooklyn, as you know, kind of a very hip area. So we kind of had that support from the locals who were trying to quit smoking and found our device, just kind of serendipitously. But we also kind of found our own ways through mommy bloggers. Then we moved on to fashion bloggers. we just looked at lifestyles in general and we saw how does our product fit in that lifestyle, and can we see certain people in them using the Bedford Slims device. And what we found there was that there were quite a number of people who would agree with not only trying the device, talking about the device, spreading the word. So a lot of it was word of mouth, and some of it was just making good connections and not being afraid to find that really fashionable person on our Instagram and be like, hey, what do you do for a living? What do you want to, like, maybe have some samples to show around to your clients or something like that? And, that's when the introduction game really started to begin and take off. Yeah, I mean, I would say getting into movies and all that stuff has been great, but, you have to be available and ready to fire on command. We're actually, look for us in the new Kids remake that's coming out pretty soon. All the kids this time around are smoking e-cigs. So
That's awesome. Where do you see the highest amount of potential as far as kind of the people that you haven't reached out to yet?
it's interesting because new doors are always opening up. You know, we'll, like I said before, we had like this Icelandic following, and it actually came about because there were like these fashion models who really liked our product in Brooklyn and took it back to Iceland. So it's kind of like finding these pockets. Like, we were really big in Milan, Italy, for example, because all the fashionistas down there are, this is the brand that they attribute themselves to. So, one of the big markets that we're in right now, we're working in, is actually, I'm down here in Flatbush where we're operating now, and we're finding a whole great market here of people who haven't really experienced e-cigarettes yet in the Caribbean communities, and they're trying them for the first time, and the response has been really great, and we're seeing now orders from the Caribbean. So
I'd like to thank Jesse. Like I said, you're a friend and somebody who shows people opportunity. So I'm glad you're doing it. Keep breaking down those doors and getting the product in front of more people. I recommend the product, obviously, to all of my viewers, and a lot of our friends are similar friends. So I'm not sure if I really need to recommend it to them, since you probably already have.
yes,
Thanks again for stopping by, and we'll
thanks
talk
for
to you
having.
soon, man.
Yeah, man. Hey, on a side note, we should get up and go snowboarding this winter.
I go snowboarding all the time, so I'm gonna have to shoot you an invite to come up, man.
Absolutely. My weekends are finally free
There
after
you
five
go. I know
years.
for a while I just couldn't ever get a hold of you because you're so busy with the company. So
Yeah, well, I'm taking Saturdays off now, so everyone know that about me.
we'll put that out there and let everybody know Jesse's available on Saturdays.
All right.
Well, Jess, man, thanks again for stopping in, man. And like I said, we all wish you the best, and keep us updated on what's happening.
Cheers. Thanks so much.